Senior Chief Petty Officer John Van Allen Hunt, United States Navy. Colonel Kevin Roy Cunningham, United States Army. Corporal Marvis Kamar Gibbs, United States Marine Corps. Specialist David Daniel Itzkowitz, United States Army. Seaman Ariel Moratea, United States Navy. Specialist Ryan Ray Stillings, United States Army. Specialist Brian Michael Clemens, United States Army. Airman First Class Kylie Wayne Lee, United States Air Force. Petty Officer Second Class Elmer Alvarado, United States Navy. PFC Kenneth Allen Cox, United States Army. Sergeant Johnny Edward Davis, United States Army. Private Kevin Evans Morissette, United States Army. Specialist Jose Rafael Feliciano, United States Army. Petty Officer Second Class Robert Allen Stogsdill, United States Navy. Petty Officer Third Class Justin Wesley Short, United States Navy. PFC Paul Edward Engert, United States Army. Sergeant First Class Troy Desmond Jones, United States Army. Sergeant First Class Harry Nally Lono Jr., United States Army. Master Chief Petty Officer Craig David Carson, United States Navy. Private Shauna Lee Ratliff, United States Marine Corps. Petty Officer Third Class Marlon Lamont French, United States Navy. PFC Daniel James Straka, United States Army. Sergeant First Class Frederick John Edgeworth, Sergeant First Class John Frederick Dowd, United States Army. Lance Corporal Gregorio Ramon Romero, United States Marine Corps. Corporal Aaron Peter Ropke, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant Torrance Lamar Williams, United States Army. Major Vincent John Lombardi, United States Army. Specialist Casey Mark Whitchin, United States Army. Sergeant First Class Johnny Lee Buchanan, United States Army. Chief Petty Officer Daniel John Frederickson, United States Navy. Sergeant Benjamin Franklin Moore II, United States Army. Petty Officer Second Class Anthony Liddell William Shinton, United States Navy. Petty Officer Third Class Francisco Antonio Fairley, United States Navy. Corporal Benjamin George Green, United States Army. Staff Sergeant John Morris Perry, United States Air Force. Major Christopher Winfield Musick, United States Air Force.
Thank you all. Chief Petty Officer Ross Wayne Bathauer, U.S. Navy. Staff Sergeant Martin Meyer Steiner, U.S. Army. Sergeant First Class John William McAllister, U.S. Army. Airman Apprentice Ronnie Wayne Bentley, Jr., U.S. Navy. Seaman Apprentice Christian Nicholas Early, U.S. Navy. Chief Warrant Officer Second Class Timothy Wayne Mahayan, U.S. Army. Sergeant William John Tracy, Jr., U.S. Army. Specialist Rodrigo Gonzalez Garza, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Manuel Angel Martinez Menjes, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Christopher Jarrell Sampson, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Kenneth Francis Roselle, U.S. Army. Chief Warrant Officer Second Class J. Darren J.D. Smith, U.S. Army. Captain Gerald Ray McCoy, U.S. Navy. Chief Petty Officer Richard Rodney Whitehouse, U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Jared Randall Allen, U.S. Navy. Staff Sergeant Shelby Dawn Orlow, U.S. Air Force. Master Chief Petty Officer Charles William Hibbs, U.S. Navy. Sergeant Brent Allen Slocum. Brett Allen Slocum, U.S. Army. Specialist Dennis Israel Torres, U.S. Army. Chief Petty Officer Daryl Pfizer, U.S. Navy. Specialist Philip Gregory Forrest, U.S. Army. Master Chief Petty Officer Thomas Ralph Center, U.S. Navy. Sergeant First Class Michael Troy Longest, U.S. Army. Specialist Richard Torres, U.S. Army. Ricardo Torres, excuse me. Lieutenant Commander William John Huffield, U.S. Navy. Petty Officer Third Class Judy Beth Grady, U.S. Navy. Captain James Van Ellet Lemp, U.S. Army. Petty Officer First Class John Foma Corsi III, U.S. Navy. Seaman Recruit Officer Renee Cruz, U.S. Navy. Staff Sergeant Gerald William Nichols, U.S. Air Force. Master Sergeant David Guthrie Crawford, U.S. Army. Petty Officer Second Class Arthur David Brown, Jr., U.S. Navy. Private First Class David Michael Kepping. Brian Michael Kepping, U.S. Army. Sergeant First Class Thomas Michael Reed, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Jim Lewis Navarro, U.S. Air Force. Private First Class Spence A. McNeil, U.S. Army. Private Second Class Petty Officer Second Class Darnell Jones, U.S. Navy. Specialist Mark Allen Moser, U.S. Army. Senior Airman Gregory Wayne Esler, U.S. Air Force. Staff Sergeant Stephen Robert Elson, U.S. Army. Private Second Class Deonia Marie Westbrooks, U.S. Army. First Sergeant Raphael Linares Copin, U.S. Army. Sergeant First Class Bruce Roberts Vintage, U.S. Army. Senior Master Sergeant Michael Joseph Lesson Larson, U.S. Air Force. Specialist Barry Michael Stevens, U.S. Army. Sergeant Joshua Michael Hirako, U.S. Army. Chief Warrant Officer 3, Kenneth Leroy Miller, U.S. Army. Specialist Lucas Victor Tripp, U.S. Army. Private First Class Strider Orion Stoutenberg, U.S. Army. Private First Class Andrew Douglas Stevens, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Brian Lee Pevlich, U.S. Army. Captain Christopher Eric Britton, U.S. Army. Sergeant John LaRue Echenlob, Jr., U.S. Army. Private First Class Sean Allen Meyersick, U.S. Army. Private First Class Tommy Chance Young, U.S. Army. Private Second Class Michael Hernandez II, U.S. Army. Sergeant Wayne Morris Hall, U.S. Marine Corps. Commander Charles Edward Edwin Slick III, U.S. Navy. Private Scott Andrew Phillips, U.S. Army. Specialist Derek Edward Junk, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal Michael Stevens Terrell Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. Private First Class Joel Ray Rezenbach, U.S. Army. Seaman recruit, Fred John Vicanti, U.S. Navy. Major Brian David Schweinberger, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Marcon James Haig, U.S. Army. Cadet Derek Dwayne Ladding, U.S. Navy. Airman Basic Hill Hannah Journey, U.S. Air Force. Sergeant Dwayne Hawkins, U.S. Army.
Airman First Class Gregory Orwicks Badger, U.S. Air Force. Master Sergeant Willie J. Stone, Sr., United States Army. Sergeant David Lee Manning, U.S. Army. Command Sergeant Major Delbert O. Jennings, U.S. Army. Private First Class Oscar Leonardo Gallo Castaneda, United States Army. Petty Officer 3, Jason Profit, United States Navy. Airman Apprentice Pelek Yaranosjan, United States Navy. Major Peter Johns, United States Air Force. Tech Sergeant David Earl Wyman, U.S. Air Force. Private First Class Delbert Stephen Stewart Jr., U.S. Army. Captain Ryan Anthony Beaupre, U.S. Marine Corps. Staff Sergeant Kendall Damon Waters Bay, U.S. Marine Corps. Major J. Thomas Aubin, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Brian Matthew Kennedy, U.S. Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Jose Antonio Gutierrez, U.S. Marine Corps. Second Lieutenant Darrell Shane Childers, U.S. Marine Corps. Petty Officer 3, Freddie Lamb III, U.S. Navy. Specialist Brandon Scott Tobler, U.S. Army Reserve. Lance Corporal Eric James Orlowski, U.S. Marine Corps. Lieutenant Thomas Mullen Adams, U.S. Navy. Sergeant Nicholas Michael Hodson, U.S. Marine Corps.
The next 39 names were lost in a single day on March 23rd.
Lance Corporal Robert Thomas Blumka Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. Specialist Daryl Larner Mitchell, U.S. Navy. Master Sergeant Michael Maltz, U.S. Air Force. Lieutenant Colonel John Stein, U.S. Air Force. Senior Airman Jason Thomas Plight, U.S. Air Force. First Lieutenant Tamara Long Archuleta, U.S. Air Force. Staff Sergeant Jason Carlisle Hicks, U.S. Air Force. Staff Sergeant John Mike Teal, U.S. Air Force. Private Micah Shane Jones, U.S. Marine Corps. Captain Christopher Scott Seifert, U.S. Army. Private First Class Howard Johnson II, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal Michael Jason Williams, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Jorge Alonso Gonzalez, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Jose Angel Garibay, U.S. Marine Corps. Sergeant Michael Edward Bitts, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Randall Kent Rosacker, U.S. Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Thomas Jonathan Slocum, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Kernafun An Chanawarkis, U.S. Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Brian Rory Busing, U.S. Marine Corps. Lance Corporal David Keith Frigley, U.S. Marine Corps. Specialist Jamal Richard Addison, U.S. Army. Private Jonathan Lee Gifford, U.S. Marine Corps. Sergeant Donald Ralph Walters, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal Donald John Klein, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. Second Lieutenant Frederick Eben Porcorny, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. Private First Class Tamario Dimitris Burkett, U.S. Marine Corps. Private First Class Brandon Ulysses Sloan, U.S. Army. Sergeant George Edward Buggs, U.S. Army. Private Nolan Ryan Hutchings, U.S. Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Patrick Ray Nixon, U.S. Marine Corps. Specialist James Michael Keel, U.S. Army. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Johnny Villarreal Mata, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Philip Andrew Jordan, U.S. Marine Corps. Sergeant Brendan Curtis Rice, U.S. Marine Corps. Master Sergeant Robert John Dowdy, U.S. Army. Specialist Edward John Aguiano, U.S. Army. Private Ruben Estrella Soto, U.S. Army. Chief Petty Officer Maurice Merksen, Jr., U.S. Navy. Private First Class Lori Ann Pistua, U.S. Army. Sergeant Bradley Stephen Corthos, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Evan Tyler James, U.S. Marine Corps. Specialist Gregory Paul Sanders, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal Thomas Allen Blair, U.S. Marine Corps. Private First Class Adam David Court, U.S. Army. Specialist Philip Kenneth Thorne, U.S. Army. Major Gregory Lewis Stone, U.S. Army, U.S. Air National Guard. Petty Officer 3, Michael Van Johnson, Jr., U.S. Navy.
Corporal Robert Marcus Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. Staff Sergeant Donald Charles May, Jr., United States Marine Corps. Captain Todd Helbling, United States Army. Lance Corporal Flores Francisco Abraham Martinez, United States Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Patrick Terrence O'Day, United States Marine Corps. Petty Officer First Class Patrick Sean Ogilvie, United States Navy. Lance Corporal Jeremiah Hatch Nilsson, United States Marine Corps. Fireman Christopher James Riddle, United States Navy. Sergeant First Class Dennis Lee Splan, United States Army. Lieutenant Anthony Joseph Wegerski, United States Navy. Major Kevin Gerard Nave, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant First Class Lloyd Sherman Clements, Jr., United States Army. Private Stephanie Ann Martin, United States Army. Sergeant Teresa Ann Tidwell, United States Army. Petty Officer Third Class Jason Neal Abbott, United States Navy. Private William Courtney Young, United States Army. Lance Corporal Del Solar Jesus Suarez, United States Marine Corps. Gunnery Sergeant Joseph Manusa, United States Marine Corps. Major Peter Charles Graff, United States Army. Private First Class Francisco Abraham Martinez Flores, United States Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Jesus Alberto Suarez del Solar, United States Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Patrick Terrence O'Day, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant Roderick Antony Solomon, United States Army. Sergeant Fernando Padilla Ramirez, United States Marine Corps. Airman First Class Sheena Marie Ellis, United States Air Force. Lance Corporal William Wayne White, United States Marine Corps. Staff Sergeant Jacob L. Frazier, United States Air National Guard. Sergeant Orlando Morales, United States Army. Private First Class Michael Russell Creighton Weldon, United States Army. Private First Class Diego Fernando Rincon, United States Army. Corporal Michael Edward Curtin, United States Army. Sergeant Eugene Williams, United States Army. Staff Sergeant James Wilford Cawley, United States Marine Corps Reserve. Sergeant Brian Daniel McGinnis, United States Marine Corps. Captain Aaron Joseph Contreras, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant Michael Vernon Lelouch, Lelouch, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant John Albert Shoemaker Jr., United States Army. Specialist William Andrew Jeffries, United States Air Reserve National Guard. Specialist Brandon Jacob Rowe, United States Army. Sergeant Jacob Lee Butler, United States Army. Specialist Thomas Robert Strode Jr., United States Army. Lance Corporal Joseph Basil Maglione III, United States Army. As you were, United States Marine Corps. Lance Corporal Brian E. Anderson, United States Marine Corps. Sergeant Gilberto Yosef Strickland, United States Army. Specialist Matthew George Bold, United States Army. Sergeant Michael Francis Peterson, United States Army. Private First Class Christian Daniel Gertner, United States Marine Corps. Chief Warrant Officer 2 Scott Jamar, United States Army. Captain James Francis Adamuski, United States Army. Chief Warrant Officer 4 Eric Andrews Halvorsen, United States Army. Master Sergeant George Andrew Fernandez, United States Army. Senior Chief Petty Officer Christopher Joseph Harrison, United States Navy. Staff Sergeant Dwayne Allen Reese, United States Army. Lieutenant Nathan Dennis White, United States Navy. Chief Warrant Officer 4 Eric Anders Halvorsen, United States Army. Sergeant First Class Lionel Anthony Richards Jr., United States Army. Specialist Matthew George Pohl, United States Army. Private First Class Chad Eric Bells, United States Marine Corps. Corporal Todd David Shook, United States Army. Private First Class Raymond Adam Mendoza, United States Army. Staff Sergeant Wilbert Davis, United States Army. Sergeant First Class Randall Scott Rain, United States Army. Captain Russell Brian Ripto, United States Army. Specialist Ryan Patrick Long, United States Army. Captain Jason Edward Korn, United States Army. Sergeant Todd James Robbins, United States Army. Sergeant Donald Samuel Oakes Jr., United States Army. Staff Sergeant Nino Dugu Levidas, United States Army. Corporal Mark Asher Evnan, United States Marine Corps. Captain Edward Jason Korn, United States Army. Corporal Eric Hernandez Silva, United States Marine Corps.
Nearly 200 names in 2 months and over almost 12 hours of running today. I said I'd give you an opportunity. Who will be the first to name someone?
Chief Warrant Officer 4 George C. Miller, United States Army.
I got five, my company, little town of Minnesota, 500 people, but 5 guys died here in Vietnam. James Call, U.S. Army. Rick Athlon, U.S. Army. David Risky, U.S. Marine Corps. Rick Athlon, U.S. Army. And Patrick Smith. Gribble. U.S. Marine Corps. He was married, and he went to Vietnam, got killed, and married his son.
One of these people that I'm mentioning is my best friend growing up. I went to know him because he went down named private first class Everett Milton Stanchek, U.S. Army. It is also my privilege and honor to serve with the first CV ever to get the Congressional Medal of Honor. Delvin Charles Shields, Petty Officer, second class. U.S. Navy, Seabees Battalion 11, Jolly Company. I had to walk in that man's shoes. I certainly hope these are not the last times that these gentlemen's names will ever be heard again. Thank you.
I'm the dinosaur in the crowd. I'm a Korean vet. I have two people from Korea that I'd like to remember. Private First Class Wendell Broad, U.S. Army, and First Lieutenant Starkweather, U.S. Air Force.
Corbin. George Long, United States Navy.
Sergeant Bobby Seymour, U.S. Army.
Anyone else?
Over here. You can run still.
Robert J. Slate, Uncle Bob. D-Day, June 6, 1944. But I want to also give these guys a plug because last year, when I met George, we set up Gold Star Dad, Gold Star Mom. We set up a field of flags in Fountain Hills, 334 3x5 American flags for a week. And you wouldn't believe the people that came out to see it. And at our state convention last year, we passed a resolution to make the Honor and Remember flag recognized in all our states. We got 20, how many now? 24 states have recognized it as an official flag for our fallen. We want to see it go across the country. I thank you for what you're all doing. I was watching you on the video today and praying for you along the way, so thank you.
One more chance for anyone to call a name. So we conclude this time of honoring these heroes with just a moment of silence as a reflection of all of those we ran for, of those families who aren't here with us, and certainly as a reminder to all of us that they shall never be forgotten as long as we're breathing. So if we can just bow our heads. Amen. Commander, I just want to thank you on behalf of our crew and our mission. Thank you so much for having us tonight, for opening your doors, for letting me have the microphone. I'm sorry if I ruined you guys' nights and the way you planned it.
No.
But, we think what we're doing is pretty spectacular. And what we'd like for you guys to do is please share it. Share it with other Legionnaires across the country. We're going through 19 states. We have a lot of overnights for the next 4 months, and we need a lot of help. Mostly just people watching and understanding the importance of what we're doing and just helping us. Usually we have t-shirts and stuff back here, to help us from day to day, but our other RV took all of our product. So we don't have anything here except a poster. We have a donation jar. We have an amazing poster. There's only 3 of them here. But this poster, this poster looks like it has our logo on it. It's nice and pretty. But really what it has on it is the names of all 20,000 American heroes that we're running for. If you get real close, you will see that every single name is on this poster. And so, to me, this is more than just a nice piece of art. It's an historic reminder of what we're going to have accomplished in the next 4 months. So any support you guys are willing to give is awesome, but we're just honored and humbled to be here. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you and God bless you. Oh, we actually do have t-shirts. The Blue RV came and showed up.